What up, everyone? Hey, Jaden Tips of Realty here again. I got a really good video for you guys. You know, if you're buying or selling a home here in Texas, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, you probably have heard of the 1 to 4 family residential contract. That is the standard form for realtors to use on resale or new construction homes. But here's the thing, where most people are focused on the price, there are several other parts of the contract that you may miss and not realize it could be a negotiation that not only can save you money as a buyer, but also save you money as a seller, keeping your bottom line higher than what you could imagine from the get-go. In this video, I'm breaking down 5 key negotiation points that you really should focus on, whether you're a seller or a buyer. And that's just really important to know. And you could completely overlook it if you don't realize, what's going on. So let's dive right into this video. Stick around to the end because I'm going to share the most important thing with you outside of the 5 that I share with you. Welcome to this video. For those of you who do not know me, I'm a realtor here in Leander, Austin, Texas, really servicing any of the greater Austin area, whether it be as far east as Round Rock, Georgetown area, as far north as Gerald. Anywhere in this greater Austin area, I'm willing to serve those who are in need to find a home of their dreams or become a first-time home buyer. If you haven't watched any of my other videos, I've been fully transparent about the fact that I just started in February. I think building a business off of transparency rather than trying to put up a facade is far better than anything you can imagine, because if you have somebody who's authentic with you, they're going to be authentic with you through the rest of the process of whether you're buying or selling. And that's important to know when you are picking a realtor. You have somebody you can trust and can be worthwhile and responsible, who has your best interest in mind. And so like me, I want to work with a professional who I know has my best interest in mind. If that fits you, I would love to have that discussion with you. My phone number is linked in the description. I'm also going to share it right now in this video, right here on the screen at 512-677-5274. And so if you're ready for a change, let's make it happen. Let's have a discussion about how we can get your home sold for the most amount of money in your pocket, or get you a new home, whether it be a resale or new construction, with the least amount of money out of your pocket. If that's something you want, let me know. I'm ready to help and I'm ready to serve you. Anyways, let's get back to this video. And next up, so one of them you may have heard, which is pretty usually the most common one you hear about, and that's the option period. And so if you take a look at the 1 to 4 family contract that I just so happen to have in my hand, and you discuss the option fee, most people think there's a standard option fee and the standard days. Honestly, that's not true at all, because it's all negotiable. But what does matter is knowing what market you're in, because depending upon the market makes it possible to either get your option fee for cheap or for longer, giving you more time as a way to get out of the contract if need be for whatever reason. And so essentially you're just buying yourself time when you make this option fee. And so most typically you can see $100 to $200 for 5 to 7 days, sometimes a little more for 10 days, all dependent upon the market, how competitive it is, and how bad you really want the house. Because if you're up against multiple offers, this is one way to make your offer stand out from the other ones. A shorter option period means less time for you to find something wrong if you're a buyer, which is good for the seller, but also at the same time, on the flip side of that, if you're a seller with a shorter option period, you can also make sure that whatever it is can get mediated faster and before closing, so that way nothing happens before closing. But anyways, that's the first point I want to talk about, is the option period. Price is fully negotiable, time is fully negotiable. Understanding those key things for the option period is highly valuable, especially if you are trying to negotiate a contract on your own. For those of you who aren't aware of this, but really and truly, the second point I want to make, the second negotiation tactic that is often hidden, that people don't really focus on, is the closing date. So Jaden, why is this important, you may ask? This is why it's important. A shorter closing period means the seller gets the money they need and the buyer gets the home they want even faster. And this can be used as a negotiation tactic in any contract you ever negotiate, because the quicker you are to want to close the deal, the more likely that seller is going to be willing to take your offer, because that means they get to get their home sold quicker. It doesn't sit on the market. It gets the most amount of money in their pocket, and the buyer also gets to walk away happy because they're getting the home sooner. And so, for example, I've seen deals won just because the buyer was flexible and matched what the seller was wanting, and it met the timeline that it needed. And here's a pro tip. Want to stand out without offering more money? Ask the other agent what the seller's ideal closing date is and match it in the contract. Anyways, that's the second point for you. Now let's move on to the third one. Repairs and credits. This is an amendment that can be made in the contract. So another thing that you can negotiate on, as I mentioned, is repairs and credits and how it can be an amendment to the contract. After the inspection, most buyers have a list that they want to send to the seller to be repaired. But actually, there may be a smarter way that you may not know about. So if you just take this point in and listen to exactly what's being said, you actually might find value in that. And so here's a smarter approach to that same thing that not only saves the seller time and headache, but also saves the buyer from getting a job they didn't like that the seller did. And so what does negotiating for a credit mean? It means no delays for waiting on repairs. The buyer also gets to choose their own contractor, and the seller doesn't have to coordinate anything. Best of both worlds for both the buyer and the seller. So pro tip, if you're gonna put this in the contract, phrase it like this. In lieu of repairs, we are requesting XX amount of credit towards closing costs. Now this saves your buyer money to repair whatever it is they wanted repaired after they close on the house, which not only saves the seller time and they don't have to coordinate anything, but the buyer gets to pick who does it and how it's done. And that's really important, especially because the buyer is the one now moving into this house, not the seller. So there's another way you can negotiate. Tip number 4 is the title policy and survey. Here in the state of Texas, it's pretty common that the seller pays the title policy. But again, that's negotiable. Same goes for the survey. If the seller doesn't have a current one, but in a buyer's market, they may want it. They may want to have a new one. And that can cost $400 to $600 for that to be done. In a hot market, sellers might push these costs to the buyers. But in a buyer's market, flip the script. Ask the seller to pay for both the title and the survey, because that is something you can negotiate and not only save your buyers money, but also make your house competitive if you are the seller. And that's very important to know. So here's another pro tip for you. Don't overlook these things together. They can impact the bottom line by $1,000 to $2,000 if not. Tip number 5. This is a big one. People often miss. If you're buying in a community that has an HOA, there are typically transfer fees, resale certificates, and other charges involved. Some of these fees are hundreds of dollars, and who pays them is negotiable. The contract gives you the ability to cap what the buyer is willing to pay. Anything above that, the seller has to cover, unless you agree otherwise. And here's another pro tip for you, as I've shared in this video. Review this early in the process, especially if you're dealing with luxury or gated communities with high HOA fees. This is highly important out there for you buyers to make sure you have an understanding that HOAs, especially when buying a home in a community with an HOA, is not cheap. And it can cost you money if you're not aware that this can be negotiated with the seller. And so sellers, make this an attractive house, you may want to offer to pay for some of these things for the buyers. If you want the most amount of money in your pocket, bottom line, some of these things you should negotiate on because it beats just the price. You can leave the price the same and save your buyers some money and still beat your bottom line number and not even realize that by just, if you lower the price $20,000 because you don't want to cover everything, now you lost $20,000 off your bottom line where you could just lose a couple $1,000s out of your pocket if you just get a full price offer and will negotiate credits for some of these things. That's just some things to keep in mind for you sellers. So there you have it, guys. 5 points of negotiation in the 1 to 4 family contract. You probably didn't know, and maybe you did, but if you didn't, now you can use them to your advantage. Option period, closing date, repairs or credits, title and survey fees, and HOA dues. If you're buying or selling a home in Texas, especially here in Leander, right now, this kind of knowledge can save you thousands of dollars. If you found this helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more real estate content like this, and drop a comment below. Tell me what you think about the video, what questions you may have about contracts and negotiating in this market. I'd be happy to share. I'd love to set up a conversation with you to discuss anything real estate and to discuss anything life related, because at the end of the day, I want to build a relationship with those I work with, not just a transaction. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.